love that one. That was really good.
What's your number two, Craig?
Right, well, I'm going controversial here with this one, right? So I'll give you a bit of background here. I am both a massive advocate of technology, just generally, but also specifically in teaching. I love using a bit of Desmos if I'm showing graphs, or GeoGebra if I'm doing anything with, circle theorems or whatever. But I'll tell you where I'm a huge skeptic, and this is iPads. Every kid having a device. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Well, there's one big reason. I've never seen a lesson where kids have been using iPads where it couldn't have been done at least as effectively, but more often, more effectively without the iPads. They tend to be a distraction for the kids, distraction for the teacher, behavior issues, going back to what you've just talked about there, attention issues, blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that's the background. Cut to a couple of weeks ago, and I'm visiting a school where I've it's about my fifth visit there, something like that. And there's a teacher there, Lucy, and she's in her maybe second year of teaching, third year of teaching, something like that, I want to say. And she's phenomenal. She's absolutely brilliant. Like, she would destroy third year teacher me. She'd be looking at me thinking, you are useless, right? She's absolutely phenomenal, right? Anyway, so I wander into her room to watch her lesson. We're going to be doing a coaching session later. All the kids have got iPads. Now, I should say, by the way, this isn't some big affluent area or anything like that. These are pretty tough kids, wide mixtures, comprehensive school and blah, blah, blah. But they've taken a decision that the kids are going to have devices and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I go into the lesson, and immediately, and this is why I'm a bad coach, right? The skeptical hat's on straight away. I'm already looking for things I'm already looking for reasons why these iPads shouldn't be out, right? I'm already thinking, no, I could do that with a mini whiteboard. I can do that without blah, blah, blah. So I watched her. There's two aspects of the lesson I watched. So the first bit I watched was her do now. And the way her do now worked is the kids had 8 questions on a sheet of paper, and they were answering the questions on that sheet of paper. And then Lucy said, okay, what I want you to do, I'm going to put a question on the board from your sheet of paper, and it's a race to see who can write their answer on their iPads as quickly as possible. Now, these were year 8 kids, I should
answer,
say.
Or just a response?
Just the actual physical answer. Like,
okay.
It was an area question, like, 20 centimeters squared or whatever. Now, these were year 8 kids, so 13-year-old kids. So immediately I'm thinking, this is a gimmick. Why are we wasting our time with this iPad thing? We could just hold up the answer on mini whiteboards, right? But the first thing to say about this phase of the lesson is the kids were loving it, right? You should have seen how eager they were to write their answer on the mini whiteboard. And then I'm stood behind Lucy. She's using whiteboard.fi. She's watching all the kids' responses come in. She's seeing, she goes, yeah, everybody's nailed that one. We don't need to worry about that one. Okay, let me fire up one more question. And then she fires up the next question. There's a problem with this question. So then she knows exactly where the problem is, so she goes through it. Now, I wasn't blown away at that stage because I thought, okay, that's fine. Sorry. I thought that's fine, but you could have done that with mini whiteboards. You're not selling me on this iPad thing yet. Then this happened, right? So then I'm hanging around the lesson, and she's doing modeling. So she does the I do, and she's been messing around with a bit of silent teacher. As I say, we've been doing some coaching together. But then she did the your turn bit on the whiteboards. So it was so slick. I'll press the button straight away. The your turn question is on each kid's iPad. The kids then start doing it. I'm stood next to her, and she shows me this screen where she's got all the kids' names. She can see their work happening live. She said, right, I'll show you one thing I can do here. So she saw one kid had made a mistake. So she quickly taps on that kid's screen, types them a quick message. She can see another kid has got a misconception. So she's put a little star by that because that's one she's going to discuss with the rest of the class. She can see another kid's absolutely she's doing all this just from the back of the room, right? So she's standing there. She's not having to, circulate or anything like that. She's standing there watching this work live. One click of a button, a kid's solutions appearing on the board that she can use to talk through. And I thought to myself, I couldn't replicate the efficiency of that without the iPads. And it was definitely the slickest use of technology, of iPad technology that I've ever seen. Now, I'm not saying that I'm a massive advocate of it or anything, like all teachers should use it. And if you gave me a choice, I'd still probably take a mini whiteboard ahead of it if I had to just choose one or the other. But I'm now coming round to the view that, and it's an obvious thing to say, right? But there are people out there who can make really good use of these tools. And as I say, I came at that lesson thinking, wow, that was best use of iPads I've ever seen. So I just wanted to share that, and I wanted to get your take, Ol. What's your view of kind of kids having devices? Have you experimented with it yourself? Have you seen it work well? Have you seen it work poorly? What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's a good question, Craig. I think in terms of what I've seen, the schools that I have seen do best from a purely academic standpoint are the ones that almost de-emphasize technology. And I think there's a parallel to be had here. I'm gonna charge your glasses, listeners. I was chatting to Dan Willingham the other day, and, and the debate the discussion we were having was about note taking approaches, right? So there's this argument that if you take it longhand on paper, the benefits that you get are more generative. So you actually remember more if you write it by hand than if you type it. But obviously the benefit of typing is similar to the benefit in Lucy's classroom. That is, you get these large efficiency gains. You can cover a lot more in a lot less time. You can move content around more flexibly and so on. But there's this, so if we look at the individual level and in an ideal scenario, it seems that the optimal kind of device for note taking, assuming you're going to review the notes again, is actually, and that you're a good note taker, is probably actually a keyboard and a computer, right? Because you can move fast, you can move more efficiently, you can review the notes, you can capture more. There's just a lot more flexibility there. However, there's this large externality with using devices, and that is if you have one student in the classroom who is not using the device in an effective way, that has, and Arnold Glass has done some great research on this, there's a high chance that their misuse of the device is going to significantly distract other students, and you end up with this kind of decline, right? So whilst Lucy might have been doing a fantastic job in her classroom, I think there's actually quite a high probability that the fact that she's got iPads for every one of her students means that every other student in that school has iPad, and not every other student is as good as Lucy or as good as at keeping students on task, and therefore you end up with kids playing all these games in all the other classes, which reduces overall learning time. So I think that's probably the general pattern, and it's kind of analogous to the note taking. It's like, well, actually note taking is better, and if you're good and if you're disciplined, it's good, but most people actually just end up shopping for shoes online, which is what Dan said happened in most of his classrooms, and was kind of the Damascus moment for him on technology. So yeah, I think that's generally the pattern, but in many ways that shouldn't stop us from exploring the powers of technology, because I think that there's so much that can be done for the schools that are doing it really well. And it would be interesting to see those schools who have built the culture that really focused in academic culture to then switch and take all those learnings are done and all those routines they've got with mini whiteboards, etc., and see what additional learning gains they could make from adding technology, and test whether the monetary investment was worth it.
Yeah, I think so. So just two final points on this all. So the first thing is Lucy was using this, as I say, whiteboard.fi, which kind of came to prominence certainly in the UK over the pandemic, because when you were doing kind of remote learning, everyone's using it. But the other thing, if you haven't checked this out, it really is worth checking out. So mathsuniverse.com, there's a guy called Jake Gordon set it up, completely free to use. And he has this tool on there called the Infinite Canvas. And it's mind-blowing. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So you can use it where kids don't need logins or anything like that. It's kind of like a closed system. You just kind of type in a room code. It's really slick. But there's a couple of ways that you can use it. So one, you could do what Lucy's doing there, where the kids, if they have devices, they could write answers and the teacher can see it all. But the other thing you can do, which is really kind of slick, is if the kids are writing on paper, you can just wander around the classroom, take a quick photo of the kids' work, and I'm literally talking one click of a button and it appears on the screen. You can annotate over it and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's kind of almost kind of like a bit of a halfway house that I think can be really effective. And the final thing, what would you do? So if you've got a choice, you can either have all your kids can have devices, but you've got to use them, let's say once a lesson or something like that, or no devices. What would you take there?
I think it depends the age level, and the subject as well. For most of maths, it's probably just the whiteboard, I would say. It's probably sufficient, and that's definitely the case in primary school. if we were moving into secondary school, I think there's actually a lot of unexplored options for like more student directed work, and which relates to the kind of bonus question we'll be chatting about today as well, Craig. And I think that it gets a little bit more, yeah, a little bit less certain as you get to the older years. It also depends upon the school culture. So if I was in a school where students were pretty independently driven and pretty focused, and in the older years, I'd probably opt for the laptop because it's so much more flexible. But if I was in a school where there's kind of behavioral issues and students kind of need more motivation and driving of the lesson from the teacher, then I'd go for the mini whiteboards.
Love it. Love it. Right, so what is your third one?
Oh, I will also add, Bryn Humberstone would be very disappointed with me if I didn't mention, in relation to whiteboard.fi and all the functionality you mentioned, that Desmos also has every single functionality that you just mentioned in terms of seeing every student working simultaneously, picking various students' work to show up on the screen and things like that. So if people are already using Desmos, you don't have to switch to Whiteboard FI. No affiliation. I don't get anything from that. Just letting you know.
I've just lost
Number three.
I've lost my multi-million-pound Whiteboard FI sponsorship.
Okay. Sorry about that. Completely ruined it for you. Well, that was the plan.